Here's a fact you have heard 100 times. Ancient humans died at 30. Cavemen were basically senior citizens by 25, wrinkled and ancient, lucky to ever see a single gray hair. It is one of the most repeated facts about the past, and it is almost completely wrong. Because if you had been born 20,000 years ago, and you made it through the dangerous early years, you had a genuinely good shot at meeting your grandchildren and living deep into your 70s. The oldest humans in the Stone Age were not rare freaks of nature. They were grandmothers and elders and storytellers, and there may have been far more of them than you would ever guess. So where did this dead at 30 myth even come from? The answer is a sneaky little statistical trick, a brutal truth about babies, and a sudden boom in old people that may have helped build civilization itself. So how long did ancient humans actually live? Let's find out. The whole myth comes from a single number, life expectancy at birth. And for most of human history, that number really did sit at around 30 to 35. Case closed, right? Not even close, because that one number is quietly lying to you. Life expectancy at birth is an average, and averages can be sneaky little things. Here's the trick. Imagine a small group where, tragically, a lot of babies die very young. Now take everyone's age at death and average it all together. That pile of zeros and ones and twos drags the average way down, even if half of the adults are comfortably dying at 70. Picture it. One man dies at 70. His neighbor's baby dies at birth, add them up, divide by 2, and their average life expectancy is 35. But look closely, nobody in that story actually died at 35. That is exactly what was happening across the ancient world. Life expectancy at birth was low not because grown adults were dropping dead in their 30s, but because so many children never reached adulthood at all. So the real question was never, how long did the average person live? The real question is, if you survived childhood, how long could you live? And the answer flips the entire myth on its head. Anthropologists Michael Gervin and Hillard Kaplan went digging through the data from hunter-gatherer societies all around the world, and they found that the single most common age of death for people who made it past 15 was about 72. Not 30, 72. Someone who reached 15 could, on average, expect to live another 40 years or more on top of that. And here's the part that should really land. Hunter-gatherers who made it to adulthood aged at basically the same rate that you do. Their bodies were not on some cursed fast-forward clock. Give an ancient human a safe childhood, and they would grow old right alongside you. The wrinkles, the gray hair, the aching knees, all of it arrived on roughly the same schedule it does for us today. So if it wasn't old age creeping in early, what was killing so many people young? Not the calendar, the world. Childhood back then was a gauntlet. Infections that we now wipe out with a cheap pill could take a child in a matter of days. A simple cut could turn deadly. A bad bout of diarrhea could be a death sentence for a toddler. Birth itself was dangerous for the baby and for the mother because we insist on growing enormous brains inside a narrow walking hip. And then there were all the threats we comfortably forget today: a broken leg with no hospital, one bad winter, a failed hunt, a predator in the dark, a fall, a fight. Across hunter-gatherer societies, something like a quarter of all babies died in their very first year, and roughly half never made it to 15. That is the brutal truth hiding inside that tidy little 30. But here is the part that changes everything. Once you cleared that gauntlet, the danger dropped away. You had survived the infections, you had learned to read the world's threats, you had found your place in the group. From there, the road to old age opened up wide. So don't picture a candle that simply burns out at 30. Picture a deadly obstacle course crammed into the first 15 years, followed by a long, clear, open stretch, which means that short prehistoric life was really two completely different lives stitched together. A terrifyingly risky childhood, and, for everyone who survived it, a long, full adulthood that could easily run into the 70s, with a strong body, a sharp mind, and decades still to spare. That fearsome 30-year-old caveman was, more often than not, simply somebody's grandfather. Now here is where it gets genuinely thrilling. Old people were not just possible in the ancient world. At one point, they suddenly exploded. Anthropologists Rachel Kasperi and Sang-Hee Lee had a clever idea. You can roughly estimate how old someone was when they died by how worn down their teeth are. So they scored thousands of fossil teeth, sorting ancient humans into two groups: young adults and older adults, people old enough to be grandparents. And what they found was stunning. Around 30,000 years ago, the number of humans living to grandparent age suddenly shot upward, by some measures 5-fold. Almost overnight, the world had far more old people in it than ever before. And why does that matter so much? Because in a world with no books, no internet, and not a single written word, an old person is a living library. The elder who still remembers the great drought of 40 years ago, where the hidden water was, which plants you can eat, exactly how the herds moved when the cold came. That one person can be the difference between the whole group living and dying. And grandparents could do something else priceless. They could help raise the children, freeing up the parents to go find more food. Kaspari and Lee argue that this sudden boom in elders may have been a genuine turning point for our species. More hard-won knowledge passed down, more children surviving, bigger populations, and that famous explosion of art and tools and culture. In other words, simply having grandparents around might be one of the quiet reasons we ever became us. So the next time you catch yourself rolling your eyes at an older relative telling the same long story for the 10th time, try to remember that for almost the entire human story, that story was survival. It was a map, a warning, and a library, all wrapped up inside one old voice by the fire. So, how long did ancient humans actually live? Not 30. The truth is so much richer and stranger than that. They lived through a childhood that would terrify any modern parent. And the ones who made it grew old, told their stories, held their grandchildren, and died, many of them, deep into their 70s. The death at 30 myth doesn't just get a number wrong. It quietly erases people. It erases the elders, the grandmothers, the keepers of memory. The very people who may have made everything that came after even possible. Yes, you will, on average, outlive your Stone Age ancestors. But not because your body is built any better than theirs was. It's because we finally beat the one thing that was truly killing them. Not old age, but a dangerous childhood. That long life was sitting inside them the whole time. They just had to survive long enough to reach it. The clock was never really the enemy. The first 15 years were. This is Sketchient. Subscribe and stay curious about where we came from.